Hello, welcome to my channel. Here, we share testimonies from people who have had near-death experiences and other spiritual encounters. Today, we will dive into the astonishing story of Everett Langston. He says he died, met Jesus, and received a revelation that challenges everything the church has traditionally described about him. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now's the time. Leave a comment with your name and city. Let's listen to Everett's powerful testimony. My name is Everett Langston, and I have a story to tell that has completely changed my life and my worldview. First of all, let me tell you a little about who I was before this extraordinary event. I've always been an ordinary man, the kind you probably wouldn't notice in a crowd. I was born and raised in the northwestern United States, more specifically in Spokane, Washington. It's a quiet city, perfect for someone like me, who has always preferred the predictability and calm of a routine life. For many years, I worked as a supervisor in the probation department of a juvenile court. It was challenging work, but I liked the idea of being able to make a difference in the lives of these young people. My wife, Grace, and I lived a simple life. We had our home, our friends, our church. Ah yes, the church. Faith has always been an important part of my life. I grew up in a traditional Christian family and carried these teachings with me throughout my adult life. My faith, on my purpose in life. And that's the story I want to share with you now. A story of death and rebirth, of revelation and transformation. A journey that took me beyond the limits of what I believed was possible and brought me back with a new understanding of what it truly means to be alive. Brace yourself, because what I'm about to tell you may challenge your own beliefs and perceptions. But I ask that you keep an open mind. Because, believe me, reality is much vaster and more wonderful than we can imagine. It all started with pain. A sharp, searing pain that struck me like lightning on the left side of my body. At first, I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just a temporary discomfort. After all, I had faced kidney stones before, and I imagined it could be something similar. But as the minutes passed, the pain only increased, becoming almost unbearable. Grace, my wife, knew something was wrong as soon as she saw me. She knows me too well to be fooled by my attempt to hide my discomfort. "Everett," she said, "I think we'd better go to the hospital." I was a little reluctant, as I always do in these cases, but I ended up agreeing. The pain was getting really intolerable. The ride to the hospital seemed like an eternity. Every bump of the car sent waves of pain through my body. I clung to the seat, my knuckles white with strength, trying to breathe through the pain like I had learned last time. Grace drove as fast as she could, casting worried glances my way every few seconds. Arriving at the emergency room, I was quickly attended to. The doctors asked questions, examined me, and soon came to the conclusion I was already expecting: another kidney stone. Despite my familiarity with the situation, I couldn't help but feel butterflies in my stomach when they informed me that surgery would be necessary to remove the stone. I was taken to a prep room, where nurses began preparing me for the procedure. I remember looking at Grace, who was holding my hand tightly, her eyes full of concern but also love and support. "It's going to be okay," she said, trying to smile. I nodded, trying to convey a confidence I didn't fully feel. As the anesthesia began to take effect, I felt a strange sense of premonition. It was as if a part of me knew something extraordinary was about to happen. I tried to push that thought aside, attributing it to natural nervousness before surgery. But the feeling persisted, a tingling at the base of my spine that had nothing to do with the medication. The last things I remember before losing consciousness were the bright lights from the operating room ceiling, the muffled sound of the doctors' and nurses' voices, and Grace's face disappearing behind the closing doors. Then, darkness. I didn't know it at the time, but I was about to embark on the most incredible, life-changing journey of my life. A journey that would take me beyond the limits of what I believed possible, that would challenge everything I thought I knew about life, death, and what comes after. What happened next is something that even today, years later, I have trouble putting into words. But I'm going to try, because I believe it's a story that needs to be told. A story that can change the way we see the world and our place in it. The surgery itself went well, at least that's what I was told afterwards. The stone was successfully removed, and under normal circumstances, I should have woken up a few hours later feeling sore but relieved. However, fate had other plans for me. In the hours following surgery, while I was still unconscious, my body began to fight a silent, deadly battle. The antibiotic that was supposed to prevent infections did not work as expected. An infection began to spread rapidly through my system, turning what should have been a routine procedure into a fight for my life. I wasn't conscious of any of this, of course. I was lost in a deep anesthesia-induced sleep, but Grace, who was next to me, saw it all happen. Dangerous drop in blood pressure. My organs began to fail one by one, unable to receive the blood and oxygen they needed to function. Grace told me later, with tears in her eyes, what it was like to hear the sound of the heart monitor change from a constant beeping sound to a continuous high-pitched tone. My heart had stopped. I was clinically dead. The moment I was declared clinically dead marked the beginning of an experience that transcends any earthly description. Suddenly, without warning or transition, I found myself floating above my own body. It was a surreal feeling, like I was watching a scene from a movie, except the body on the bed was unmistakably mine. I saw the doctors and nurses working frantically, their voices muffled as if they were coming from far away. I watched Grace, my beloved wife, her face contorted with anguish, holding my limp hand. I wanted to comfort her, tell her that everything was okay, but I discovered that I had no voice, no physical body to touch hers. The strangest thing of all was that, despite the dramatic scene unfolding below me, I felt no fear. On the contrary, I was overcome by a feeling of deep and complete peace, something I had never experienced before. It was as if all the worries, fears, and anxieties I carried in life had simply dissolved. Then, without warning, I started moving. It was not a physical movement as we know it, but a kind of instantaneous displacement. I passed through the hospital ceiling as if it didn't exist, watched the other floors pass me by in a blur, and suddenly I was out, hovering over the city. The speed increased. I watched the familiar landscape of Spokane disappear beneath me. The mountains and forests of the northwestern United States turned into a carpet of green that grew smaller and smaller. The blue sky gave way to the deep black of space, dotted with stars of a clarity I've never seen from Earth. And then, in front of me, I noticed a light. It was like nothing I had ever seen before. It was bright but not dazzling. Warm and welcoming, it seemed to call me. I felt irresistibly drawn to it. As I got closer to the light, I started to hear sounds. They weren't exactly songs, but heavenly harmonies that seemed to vibrate through my being. It was as if the universe itself was singing a welcome song. Then, in the blink of an eye, I passed through the light. It was like walking through a curtain of pure energy. On the other side, I found myself in a place of indescribable beauty, colors more vivid than anything on earth. The landscape was breathtaking, if I still needed to breathe. Lush green fields stretched as far as the eye could see, forests of majestic trees whose leaves sparkled with their own light. Rivers of crystal clear water snaked through the land, like liquid diamonds. The air, if I can call it that, was filled with a sweet, comforting scent, a mix of fresh flowers and something else I can't describe but made me feel instantly at home. The most incredible thing, unconditional, absolute love filled the entire place. It was as if the environment itself was alive and conscious, embracing and welcoming me. At that moment, I knew with certainty that I had reached heaven. Not the heaven of books or paintings, not the heaven I imagined in my prayers, but a real heaven, alive and infinitely more wonderful than anything I could have dreamed of. And my journey was just beginning. As I took in the celestial landscape around me, I noticed something extraordinary. Everything seemed to be alive and conscious. The trees weren't just trees, but sentient beings radiating welcome. The flowers turned toward me, as if they were greeting me. Even the ground beneath my feet seemed to pulse with life and energy. I began to walk, or rather, float, through this paradise. Each step revealed new wonders. I saw waterfalls of light that flowed upward instead of downward, their glowing waters emitting heavenly music as they touched the rocks. Fields of flowers changed colors as I passed, creating a living kaleidoscope of hues I'd never known. In the sky above, constellations moved and danced, forming patterns that told cosmic stories. Occasionally, comets of love crossed the heavens, leaving golden trails that made my very being vibrate with indescribable joy. As I explored, I realized I could move just by thought. If I wanted to be atop a distant mountain, boom, I was there. If I wished to dive into an ocean of light, I found myself surrounded by luminous creatures unknown to Earth. But the most surprising thing was the connection I felt with everything around me. There was no separation between me and the environment. Every atom of my being harmonized with every atom of that heavenly place. Love and joy radiated from everything, and I knew they radiated from me too. At one point, I stopped by a crystal-clear lake. Its waters reflected the sky above, but also seemed to contain galaxies in their depths. And as I gazed at my reflection, I was shocked. It wasn't the 53-year-old Everett with gray hair and wrinkles staring back at me. Instead, I saw a radiant version of myself, young, vibrant, but also wise and serene. I was seeing my true essence, free from the limitations of the physical body and linear time. As I stared at my reflection, I felt a presence approaching, not physically, but as an intensifying sensation of love and welcome that permeated the air. My consciousness turned, and then I saw him for the first time on this journey, Jesus. His appearance wasn't like the paintings or statues I knew from Earth. He was pure light, love incarnate. His presence was powerful yet gentle, instantly making me feel at home. His eyes, deep as the universe and warm as a father's embrace, gazed straight into my soul. "Welcome, Everett," his voice didn't speak in words but resonated directly within my being. "You have much to see and learn." In that moment, I knew my journey was only beginning, with even more profound revelations to come. As I walked through that heavenly paradise, marveling at every detail, I felt a presence approaching. It was a feeling unlike anything I had ever experienced, a mix of awe, unconditional love, and inexplicable familiarity. Instinctively, I knew who I was about to meet. The trees in front of me seemed to open up, forming a natural path. And there he was, Jesus Christ. But he was not the Jesus of Renaissance paintings or stained glass windows in churches. It was a radiant figure, emanating a soft, warm light that seemed to embrace everything around it. His eyes. Oh, his eyes were endless pools of compassion and understanding. When he looked at me, I felt like my entire life was being seen and understood in an instant. There was no judgment, just total acceptance and pure love. I fell to my knees, not out of fear or forced reverence, but because the emotion was simply overwhelming. Tears, if you can call it that in that state, streamed down my face. It was as if all the weight of my sins, doubts, and earthly fears were being washed away. Jesus approached me, his gentle smile lighting up his entire face. He reached out his hand and helped me up. His touch was like an electric current of pure love coursing through my entire being. "Welcome, Everett," he said, his voice ringing not just in my ears, but in every fiber of my being. "You've had a long journey to get here." I was speechless. How do you respond to God's own Son? But I realized I didn't need to talk. In that place, communication went beyond words. Our thoughts, emotions, and memories flowed freely between us. Jesus began walking, gesturing for me to follow him. As we walked side by side, he began to speak. His voice was like music, full of wisdom and understanding. "Everett," he said, "I know you have many questions. About life, about faith, about the purpose of it all. And I know that much of what you see here challenges what you thought you knew." I nodded, unable to put into words the confusion and amazement I felt. Jesus continued, "The truth, Everett, is far simpler and yet deeper than many on earth believe. Love, unconditional, universal love, is the essence of everything. As he spoke, I felt as if veils were being removed from my eyes. Deep understandings about the nature of reality, the purpose of life, and the interconnectedness of all things, flowed into me. Many of the teachings you received on earth, Jesus explained, are human interpretations, sometimes distorted by limitations of understanding or by personal agendas. The essence of my message has always been about love, compassion, and unity. Not about judgment, separation, or fear. These words hit me deeply. How many times had I judged others based on narrow interpretations of Scripture? How many times had I allowed fear, rather than love, to guide my actions? Jesus, noticing my thoughts, placed his hand on my shoulder. Don't blame yourself, Everett. Each journey is unique, and each soul learns and grows in its own time. The important thing is that you are here now, seeing and experiencing the truth for yourself. At that moment, I felt a wave of gratitude so intense that I thought my being would explode. Gratitude for this experience, for this revelation, for this unconditional love that I now understood to be the true nature of the universe. Jesus smiled, a smile that seemed to contain all the wisdom and love of the cosmos. You have so much more to see and learn, Everett. Are you ready to continue our journey? Without hesitation, I said yes. Little did I know that the deepest revelations were yet to come. As we walked side by side, Jesus began to reveal truths to me that challenged everything I thought I knew about reality, faith, and the purpose of existence. His voice was soft, but each word carried the weight of universal truth. Everett, he began, much of what you and others on earth believe about me, about heaven, and about the nature of spiritual reality is a simplification. The truth is far vaster and more wonderful than the human mind can fully comprehend. He paused, allowing me to absorb his words. Then he continued, the image that many have of me as a harsh judge, ready to condemn, is far from the truth. My essence, the essence of all that is divine, is unconditional love. Not the kind of conditional love that often experienced on earth, but a love that accepts, embraces, and nurtures all souls. These words hit me deeply. How many times had I feared divine judgment? How many times had I judged others, believing I was doing God's will? Jesus, noticing my thoughts, smiled gently. The judgment you fear on earth is actually an illusion. Each soul, upon leaving the physical plane, goes through a process of self-reflection. It is at this moment that you view your life through the lens of universal love and understand the consequences of your actions and choices. He continued, his voice full of compassion, religions on earth, while often well-intentioned, often distort this fundamental truth. They create rules, rituals, and hierarchies that, instead of bringing people closer to the divine, often push them further away from true spirituality. I felt a mixture of shock and liberation upon hearing those words. All my life, I had faithfully followed the teachings of my church, believing that this was the only path to salvation. Now Jesus was telling me that the truth was much broader and more inclusive. True spirituality, Jesus explained, is not in following rigid rules or belonging to a specific religion. It is in living with love, compassion, and empathy. It is in recognizing the divinity in oneself and in all beings. It is in understanding that we are all interconnected parts of a universal consciousness. As he spoke, I felt as if veils were being removed from my spiritual eyes. I began to see reality in a whole new way. I saw how everything, every person, every creature, every particle in the universe, was connected by threads of light and love. I saw how our actions and thoughts created ripples in this cosmic web, affecting everything around us. The purpose of life, Jesus continued, is not to earn a place in heaven or avoid punishment. The purpose is to grow, to learn, to expand consciousness. Every life, every experience, is an opportunity for the soul to evolve and come closer to understanding the fundamental unity of all existence. These revelations were both liberating and overwhelming. I felt like my entire belief system was being deconstructed and rebuilt before my eyes. But, interestingly, there was no fear or resistance. There was just a deep feeling that finally I was getting closer to the truth. Jesus, sensing my state of mind, placed his hand on my shoulder. His touch radiated love and understanding. I know it's a lot to take in, Everett. But remember, you are not here by chance. Your journey on earth, your experiences, your struggles, and your moments of joy, they have all prepared you for this moment of revelation. I looked into the eyes of Jesus, those eyes that seemed to contain all the wisdom of the universe, and I asked the question that was burning in my heart: what should I do with all this when I return? His smile was gentle, but his eyes sparkled with an intensity that touched me deeply. Share the love, Everett. Live the truth you have experienced here. Do not preach dogma or doctrine, but show people, through your actions and your being, the reality of unconditional love and the unity of all creation. In that moment, I felt a clarity and purpose that I had never experienced before. I knew that if I had the chance to go back, my life would never be the same. And this journey of discovery and revelation was just beginning. After the profound revelations shared by Jesus, he invited me to explore more of the heavenly kingdom. There is so much more to see and experience, he said with a warm smile. Each soul perceives this place in a unique way, shaped by their own experiences and understandings. Allow yourself to take it all in without judgment or expectations. With these words, Jesus gently disappeared, not in an abrupt or frightening way, but as if he had merged with the environment around us. I realized that even without his physical presence, I could still feel his essence in everything around me. I then began my exploration of this incredible celestial realm. The first thing I noticed was how the environment seemed to respond to my thoughts and emotions. When I thought of peace and tranquility, I instantly found myself in a beautiful, serene garden with vibrantly colored flowers that I had never seen on earth. The aroma of these flowers was indescribable. A blend of fragrances that both calmed and invigorated my soul all at once. As I thought about grandeur and majesty, suddenly, the scene shifted. Now, I was on top of a magnificent mountain, gazing over an endless valley. The mountains. They gently moved, like waves in a cosmic ocean. The sky above. It was like a kaleidoscope of colors. Auroras danced, mesmerizing me in patterns beyond comprehension. At that moment, I felt connected. Connected to everything around me. The trees. The rocks. Even the air seemed to be alive. I could communicate with them, not with words, but through feelings and impressions. It was as if I was an extension of everything, and everything was an extension of me. As I wandered through this heavenly realm, I met others. Souls. Some I knew immediately, my grandparents, radiant and smiling, welcoming me with open arms. Friends I had lost along the way. They were there too, looking like the best versions of themselves. Our reunion. It was beyond words. No need for explanations or conversations. We shared everything in an instant. It was a perfect communication, free from the barriers of language. One soul, my Uncle Robert, approached me. He always inspired me on earth. He smiled, and without words, gave me a message: remember to care for your family, Everett. The love we share here, reflected in your actions on earth. But there were others too, beings beyond human comprehension. They were like pure light, radiating wisdom, compassion. Guardians of this heavenly realm. One of them approached me, showing me visions of the universe, galaxies being born, dying. The cosmic dance of stars and planets. It was humbling, and yet, a revelation of creation's magnificence. Here, time didn't exist like it does on earth. No day, no night. Just an eternal present filled with endless discoveries. Every moment. Pure joy and peace. I realized then. It wasn't about convincing people with words or theology. It was about embodying the truth, showing that we are all one, bound by divine love. Every act of kindness, Jesus continued, every moment of compassion is a window into heaven. Through your actions, you can bring a piece of this kingdom to earth. Yes, I would miss this place, but now, I had a mission that gave meaning to my life. I'm ready, I said, surprising even myself with the strength in my voice. A smile that held all the love in the universe. I know you are, Everett. And remember, you're never truly apart from this place or from me. We are always with you. In every breath, every act of love. Segment extended his hand. As I touched it, a surge of energy coursed through me, and the celestial realm around me began to blur, colors swirling, fading. The last thing I heard was his voice echoing across dimensions, go with love, Everett. Go with peace. And remember what you've experienced here. The sky disappeared. I was falling, falling, falling. Back into the world I had left behind. But this time, I wasn't the same. I was returning with a purpose. A new understanding. When I woke up, the transition was jarring. One moment, I was in heaven. Engulfed in light and love. The next, back in my aching, fragile body. In a hospital bed. But I was changed forever. The first thing I felt was pain. A sharp, pulsing pain that seemed to permeate every cell in my body. Then came the sound, the rhythmic beeping of machines, the muffled murmur of voices around me. Slowly, with an effort that seemed monumental, I opened my eyes. The fluorescent light of the hospital room was blinding and harsh compared to the soft, welcoming light of the sky. I blinked several times, trying to focus my vision. Little by little, the shapes around me began to become clear. I saw the face of Grace, my wife, her eyes red and swollen from crying, but now shining with relief and disbelief. Everett, she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. Oh, God, Everett, you're back. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and sore. A nurse quickly approached, offering me a glass of water with a straw. The simple act of drinking was difficult and painful, but also incredibly comforting. In the days that followed, I was informed about what had happened. I had been clinically dead for almost 20 minutes. The doctors were about to officially declare my death when, inexplicably, my heart started beating again. They called it a medical miracle. I knew it was much more than that. Physical recovery was slow and challenging. My body had experienced immense trauma, and it would take time to fully heal. But the most profound transformation was happening internally. From the moment I returned, I knew nothing would be the same. My experience in heaven had fundamentally changed my perception of reality, my understanding of the purpose of life, and my connection with the divine. Grace was the first to notice the changes. There's something different about you, Everett, she told me one day while helping me with physical therapy. Your eyes. They seem deeper, more serene. I smiled, feeling a surge of love for her. I've seen things, Grace, I replied softly. Things that changed everything. Little by little, I began to share my experience with Grace and others. At first, it was difficult to find the right words. How to describe colors that don't exist on Earth? How do we explain a love so vast and unconditional that it makes our earthly concepts of love seem like pale shadows in comparison? But as I spoke, I realized it wasn't the specific words that mattered. It was the energy behind them, the love and compassion that I now carried in every fiber of my being. My approach to life has changed dramatically. Things that once seemed crucially important, status, material possessions, trivial concerns, now seemed insignificant. Instead, I found myself focusing on what really mattered: love, compassion, connection. At work, my colleagues noticed the difference. Where before I might have been harsh or critical of young offenders, I now approached them with a deeper understanding and compassion. I could see beyond their mistakes to the divine light that existed within each of them. My relationship with religion has also changed. Although I still attended church, it was no longer out of a sense of obligation or fear of divine judgment. Now I saw church as an opportunity for fellowship, to share the love I had experienced in heaven. At times, I found it difficult to reconcile some of the church's teachings with what I had experienced, but I learned to focus on the essence of the message of love and compassion. I began meditating regularly, seeking to reconnect with that sense of unity and unconditional love that I had experienced in heaven. Sometimes, in moments of deep silence, I could almost feel the presence of Jesus beside me, his love wrapping around me like a comforting blanket. As the months passed, I realized that I was fulfilling the mission Jesus had given me. Not through grand gestures or preaching, but through small acts of kindness and love. A smile for a stranger, a kind word for someone in trouble, a loving hug for grace, each of these actions was a way to bring a little bit of heaven to earth. Of course, not everything was easy. There were days when earthly reality felt heavy and oppressive, days when I longed for the perfect peace I had experienced in heaven. But in those moments, I remembered Jesus' words, "You will never truly be separated from this place or me." And so, day after day, I continue my journey. Transformed by my near-death experience, but still very human. Carrying the light of heaven with me, sharing it through love and compassion. Living each day with the awareness that we are all one, all part of something much bigger and more wonderful than we can imagine. My story may seem incredible to some, hard to believe to others. But for me, it's the deepest truth I've ever known. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that love, pure, unconditional, universal love, is the most powerful force in the universe. It is what connects us, what sustains us, what takes us home. And so, I conclude my story. Not as someone who has all the answers, but as someone who has had a glimpse of something beyond our earthly understanding. My hope is that by sharing my experience, I can inspire others to live with more love, more compassion, more awareness of our fundamental unity. Because, in the end, that is what our journey here on earth is all about, learning to love, truly and unconditionally, as we are loved by the divine. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, please leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch every new video and help us spread this message to a wider audience. See you next time.